Redditors with an overactive imagination. What kinds of things do you think up? Sometimes when I'm bored and waiting for something in public, I'll look around and pick two people at random. Then try to imagine how a fight between them would play out. When I get bored I make up stories with me involved. I perfected one of those stories so much that I'm now writing a novel. This is a story that I've had in my head for almost 7 years. Obviously that I'm a secret agent, and whatever menial task I'm working on is of the utmost importance to our national, global, and perhaps galactic security. Are there enemy agents trying to kill you? And if so, how would you defend yourself and/or dispatch them? Can't talk. They're listening. Alternate universes. I like to imagine how the other me's are doing there. If this bus crashes, how am I going to die? Will my head hit this pole, or will I fly down the full length of the bus and hit that old lady? Nice try, DC Movies. Come up with your own material. I insert people I meet into the world I've been building since I was a kid. I make them protagonists of their own adventure, and I watch their progress as a spectator. Started out as a coping mechanism, but now it's mostly for fun. I usually think about video games, and if I were in that game, like a lot of people, I think of a really good drawing, but never draw it, because I'm bad. Some of the things I've made up in my head. While out walking I was a washed up baseball prodigy that made a comeback after being out of the game for 5 years and won an MVP. I won a Magic the Gathering Pro Tour. I became a world-class soccer player at age 35. I foiled several terrorist attacks on airplanes, and at airports I was a great spy for Britain. I traveled back in time to 1940 Czechoslovakia and had to make my way to British High Command. I became a billionaire through shrewd business strategies. I cured cancer and several other medical ailments. I had sex. I was in a loving relationship. Obviously none of these things have ever come true, sadly. Whenever I'm listening to songs for a prolonged period of time, like on a road trip, for example, I imagine an entire story just to go along with the current song, and vividly see it play out in my head with every little detail. It makes me wish I could record it all in my head and show what I see to people. Imagine a universe where the stars have feelings, perceptions and sentience just like us, but without the freedom of movement or ability to communicate with one another. Much like how humans develop a fear of the dark irrationally, they would too, but to an extreme, horrifying extent. Imagine being a source of light, and the only source of light for light years worth of distance in all directions, surrounded by an infinite sea of darkness. To the star, it would be a tiny glimmer of light in this massive void of space that contrasts it so greatly. Humans, from their moment of birth till their deathbed, are usually surrounded by other people. This provides them with a sense of comfort and belonging. Stars don't have this luxury. They are born brilliantly, and their spark lasts for millions and billions of years. A sentient star would be forced to exist for an unimaginably long amount of time in complete and utter loneliness, unaware if there were anyone out there like them, or if there's any purpose for them in this vast expanse of nothing besides burning bright. They would never be raised, never educated nor cared for. Over the course of time and isolation and confusion, the likes of which would drive any man insane. They would go through immense changes and eventually grow exponentially before their eventual self-destruction, or collapsing in on themselves to become the resentful, mesmerizing vortexes known as black holes. Just some thoughts while sitting on the toilet. Planning world domination. Seriously. I'm over 30 and still imagine myself as either some sort of superhero or super soldier. My kids love it though, because I get totally into the hero / tackling / nerf gun battles. Lots of shit. Usually I try to focus that overactivity into something productive, like focusing on design ideas or D&D scenarios. I've got a few machines thought up that I like to daydream about having and effing about with, but I don't have the finances to make it a reality without royally effing up my life. I often find myself lost in thought about life and the universe. I love to imagine us as little parts of a cell and the earth is just one cell in a massive being we call the universe. I also smoke a lot of weed, so I used to imagine the same as everyone else. Being able to go back in time, but retain my current knowledge. I'd commit a lottery number to memory from right after I turn 18. Go back to the night before. And live a life of luxury. I might imagine different paths I'd take. One time I'd focus on fitness. Another music. Etc. 8 years ago, I met my wife. The fantasy started to be less fun. Because I genuinely love her. So instead of going back to get all swole and be a sex god, it became sort of a game. Go back. Set up a great life. Then try to find her again. Would she even bother going out with me if I were so vastly different? Would I have to keep it low-key until we met? Then win the lottery ? 3 years ago, my son was born. I can never go back farther than 3 years now. Because there's just no possible way to ever recreate the exact scenario with the exact same sperm and egg to create this exact kid. So the furthest I could possibly go back in when my wife was already pregnant. But as much as I love the stinker, I don't want to be caring for an infant all over again. So now I only really go as far back and to about a month before the pandemic, win the lottery, and try to get out of America before we all get locked in. What other forms of life might look like, be based off, and how they might communicate. I love movies like Arrival, The Abyss, Interstellar, etc. So like, I've thought up a rough plot for 2 books I've never written before. The outline is 16 pages. It's sci-fi/fantasy with political themes. I wrote down the plot just so I don't forget. But I'm not a very creative person, and I've never written before. So I don't know whether I should bother. You know, I started writing actual scenes the other day, and I'm kind of horrible at it. It took so long to write and edit 2 full pages, and I still doubt how I want to word things. While the plot is, at least in my opinion, interesting, I know I kinda suck at character development, especially for the side characters. I've never done anything creative, so part of me thinks it would be a good exercise. I've started reading more of the genre I'm interested in, and listening to author interviews, and rereading some of my favorites as well. So it's productive, and I think healthy for my mind. But, if I feel pressure writing it, because I want it to be good, I guess I don't want to utterly fail at the only creative thing I've ever done. What's wrong with me? Me effing the Pope, exclusively. I like to think up different music videos for songs I hear coming into work. It's never just a band playing for a crowd. Just this morning I heard "And I Will Walk 500 Miles" and thought it would be funny if it was a song about a really dedicated hitman who had their driver's license revoked. Most of the time it's just me being comfortable with a theoretical woman I love. Being in quarantine has made me miss human contact so much. I just want to cuddle with someone. Damn it. So, I have a superhero universe. I like to imagine things happening in it whenever I can. Sometimes I bring in characters from video games and TV shows. I like to create some interesting situations between my and the games/show's characters. I have an entire 50+ issue comic series planned out in my mind. I know all the characters, every story arc, even songs that fit with the scenes. I have started to draw this comic so many times it's ridiculous, but maybe I'll finish it before I die. These days, friends, my imagination is highly overactive, so I started to bring it from my brain into reality and started writing. Currently writing 2 books, and it's the best way to calm down in the evening. This is gonna be kinda long, so beware. My parents are usually strict. They never surprised me nor my sister with sudden gifts. So one day, my dad said he was gonna take me somewhere, and I needed to be ready by 6 p.m. Obviously I was curious and a little worried. I asked my parents, but they wouldn't let up. Around 5 p.m., I decided to take a shower. While I was standing there in the hot water, I came up with some ideas. My first few were normal. Maybe he was taking me to school for something. This was during the pandemic, by the way, or to my friend's house to say hi. But after the first few ideas, there were some really crazy ones. I read a lot of sci-fi books. 1. The whole world is robots. Cliché. I know. But I thought I was the age when people are taken by their parents to a secret place to become robots. It wasn't my birthday, or half birthday, or cake day, for that matter. So I justified my idea by thinking the robots probably have a different calendar, and how old I'm today may be important on their calendar. 2. I was actually adopted, and they were taking me to find my real parents. I don't think this needs an explanation. 3. Similar to the second one, these were my kidnappers, and I was going to my real parents. I'd never admit this to them, though. 6 p.m. came, and I got into our minivan, wondering where I was going. I saw my dad's phone was within reach, and looked on Google Maps. It was a location I'd never seen before. Well, that knocks out the school and my friend's house, I thought. Then my overactive imagination kicked into full gear, coming up with even crazier ideas than those listed before. But I have a bad memory and this was a long time ago, so I forgot. Then we pulled up to the place, and it was School of Rock. My parents had known I'd taken an interest to guitar, and signed me up for a tour there. That was one of the most vivid times my imagination went crazy. I think about how the plumbing system would work if we had toilets and elevators.